What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Manji TV. On today's episode, we have this super rad M240i on the lift for a bunch of mods, bunch of suspension mods, that is. We're gonna show you them now. Before I get into it, there's quite a bit of stuff, so hopefully you guys stay with me here. First things first, we've got an M Performance diff, straight from BMW, 0 miles. It is the part number 33108659989. And so there's two M Performance diffs. There's a 989 and a 987 part number. The only real difference, from my understanding, is the gear ratio. So it just more depends on which gear ratio your car came with. You get the right one for your car. This particular car has the 8.9. We also have a bunch of other stuff here, super cool stuff that are much needed when you go high horsepower on these cars, as they get quite sketchy. As you saw in the previous M240i video, we did rear subframe bushings and some tow arms and whatnot. We did the AKG stuff with some SPL arms that were manufactured by Turner. Here we have some more control arms manufactured by Turner. We have the tow arms here, as well as the lower traction arms here. So we're gonna be installing those, paired with some ECS branded diff bushings. So these are like the rears and the front subframe bushings. All these little inserts here go with those. We have some front control arm monoballs. We obviously have some sway bars here, front and rear. We do have some sway bar end links here. So we're gonna be doing SPL front and rear adjustable end links here. Those are gonna be critical in making this all work beautifully. We also have the ECS rear diff bushings and the front diff bushings here. So I'm gonna be doing the differential bushings as well from ECS, and that will pretty much wrap it up. So, there is an Eccentric lockout kit. Because we went with the Turner arms for whatever reason, they don't supply the lockout kit with their stuff, whereas the SPL stuff does. So we got a lot of work ahead of us. Let's go ahead and move on to the car here. You've seen us do this once before. I'm gonna walk you through it real quick. First things first, undo your brakes. Then we're gonna undo our rotors. We're gonna undo our parking brake stuff, pull our parking brake cables through. We've got to get the ABS cables and wear sensor cables here undone. We'll get the arms out of the way. The shocks will have to come undone. We'll leave those hanging in the car. The exhaust will have to come out of the way as well. And then basically that's it. We'll undo the drive shaft and the heat shield there that covers the exhaust, and this one brace going from the subframe up to the center of the car. And then we'll go ahead and lower the subframe down. Hopefully it doesn't take too long. Right now it's 1:55 p.m. Hopefully we can get this down within an hour, and then it'll be about 3 o'clock. We'll start on the subframe bushes and the differential bushes, and then once that's done, we'll go ahead and move on to the control arms. My hope is to have this, at least the rear subframe section, done today. We'll see how long it actually takes. But yeah, enough talking about it. Let's go ahead and get to it. Hopefully you guys like this type of content. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. Keep yourselves tapped in, because there's gonna be a lot more content coming like this. So yeah, enough has been said, I think, about these parts. We'll get some close-up B-roll stuff as we unbox them. But yeah, diff bushing, subframe bushing, sway bars, traction arms, tow arms, Eccentric lockout kit, and performance differential. Let's get to it. Under the car now, first things first, let's go ahead and get this exhaust off. We've got a 13 mil or 15 mil bolt here and a 13 millimeter nut for the mount here. Cross member here in the front with, I believe they're like T55s or T45s. And then we've got like a bigger T60 back here, screw in the back to remove this brace. Once we do that, that'll allow us to drop the exhaust completely, where the final bolts holding it are here in the back at the muffler. We've got a 13 mil here and a 13 mil here. And if you got a stock muffler or some aftermarket systems, you're probably gonna have an electronic valve to disconnect. So don't forget to do that either. Let's go ahead and get that stuff off. After we'll do that, we'll remove this underbelly heat shield. You'll see us pull that here in a bit, and then we're gonna go ahead and tackle this rear mount on the drive shaft. From there, we will, like I said before, we're gonna disconnect the brakes. You've got some 16 mil nuts or screws here, and a little T30 or Allen like 5 or 6 mil head screw for the parking brake cable hold, and then that will allow us to get the brakes off. and take the rotor off here on the front side and remove the parking brake cables from the parking brakes. Once we do that, we'll hang the calipers as well after we remove them and get on to lowering the subframe down, to which we will get the diff separated and get those bushings replaced on the diff and the subframe. So let's go ahead and get this bad boy out. All right guys, quick rundown of what we've done. All of the ABS, brake wear sensors, and EDC connections are free. The level sensor here on this side has to be disconnected and unclipped from the bracket there and pulled out as well on the driver's side. We're gonna go ahead and get the shocks undone now and the e-brakes undone. We have obviously the brakes here off. We're gonna take the rotors off and undo the brake cables next, but wanted to show you guys the braces held in with one bolt. We're about to remove this and the exhaust and the heat shields, and we'll keep moving forward. E-brake has been disconnected. All we had to do was remove one pin from one side and one lower spring, and we removed the little expander that goes in there, which allowed us to just pull the lines out with the bracket that holds it in from the back removed. We've removed the lower shock bolt. Everything else is out of the way. The heat shields have been removed. Drive shaft has been undone. Everything else that connects to the subframe has been undone. The e-brake cables are just going to hang here. We did have to disconnect the little lower pocket plastic, one 8mm screw here, and two pop clips, and then there's two E40s that go here. We've removed those E40 screws, and now we're going to get the 4 subframe bolts, and that'll pretty much be it. And we'll bring the subframe down on this table here. We'll get this cleared off and put a jack under the diff and support it that way when we remove the 4 bolts. So let's go ahead and do that. All right guys, we're gonna go ahead and zap these subframe bolts. Take the back ones out and then the front ones. You can see the subframe just lowered itself down a bit there. Go ahead and get these out of the way. And we'll go ahead and get the front ones. We're having to break the front ones by hand just due to the table kind of being in the way to get an impact in there and needing a deeper socket. We'll zap those by hand. A little driver with an extension adapter. Guys, you got a big old bracket like this. We're just hitting it with a little extension. There it is, guys. All right, now the subframe is actually unbolted from the car. Everything is out of the way. I'm gonna go ahead and lower the jack down slightly. The reason I chose to use the jack is it gives you a little bit of wiggle room as far as height goes with the car. Being able to kind of, instead of lowering the car onto some wood, you can just lower the subframe down onto the table and away from the car. And then from here, he can bump the car up. And from here, we start bumping the car away. As you can see, the subframe's already down and away from the car. And then we can go straight to bumping up the car and taking the subframe away from it. So that'll do. Keep going, bud. We're good. Just watch that brake caliper.
I am.
Okay. We're good. Good. We're good. Caliper. Yep. Yep. Just gotta watch the caliper, guys, so it doesn't get caught on the arms here as it comes by. Sorry, that was a little bit of a dark shot. Cables will come up out of the way. Watch these guys. Just go all the way up, would you? and that's how it's done. We'll go ahead and move this back and get these subframes pressed out or hammered out, and this diff unbolted. The other thing is now we can set the subframe up on some wood and allow us to kind of lower the diff away from the subframe so that we can do the diff swap and also put the new diff bushings in. So yeah, let's go ahead and get this diff out of the way and some of these control arms replaced, like this lower traction arm and this rear toe arm with eccentric lockout. We're gonna get the sway bar replaced and the sway bar end link here replaced. Take a look at this nice flimsy unit. Not to mention this sway bar is super dinky, so the new sway bar is definitely gonna aid in making this M240 feel more like an M2 with this LSD upgrade and control arms and whatnot, subframe bushings. So let's get to it. All right guys, we've gone ahead and removed our rear toe arm, which gave us easier access to remove our lower nut here for our sway bar end link. We've zapped both those on both sides. We're gonna go ahead and get these E12s or E10s off, get this sway bar replaced real quick. Then we'll go ahead and install our new toe arm and end link. And then from there, we're gonna go ahead and install our traction arm. And then we'll go ahead and work on swapping the diff and the bushings. Rear sway bar is off. We are about to install the H&R sway bar in the rear. It is only a one-hole sway bar. You could drill another hole. There is room for another hole if you wanted to drill one, but one is probably going to be sufficient for this customer. This sway bar is at least twice as thick, it seems, and it's much heavier. It's not necessarily a pro, but the fact that it's much thicker is. We're going to be accompanying it with some SPL sway bar end links here. So we'll be unpackaging these here and throwing those on, but very easy install. Sway bar just comes out in one swoop. Once you have the subframe down enough, we'll go ahead and just install it like so. It tucks under the upper arm, kind of facing up with the ends here. We'll go ahead and get our new end links installed and get the brackets on supporting that sway bar for us, and we'll keep moving on. All right guys, I moved ahead real quick and took off the traction arm that goes from here to there on both sides. We'll be installing our Turner one, but started in on the diff bushings. It's kind of an annoying process, so I'm just gonna show you one. We also got the sway bar in and tight. These end link nuts torqued to 56 Newton meters, and these sway bar bolts here torqued to 28 Newton meters. So they've been torqued. We're on the last bushing here. We're just gonna burn this. I like to start on the inside and do a little bit that way and a little bit this way. It takes about maybe a minute or two to get this thing hot enough to where it'll literally just fall right out. So I'll film it and show you guys what I'm talking about. As you guys can see, I literally didn't have to hammer it, nothing, just got it hot enough that the slug fell out. Last time we did this, we hammered them out. We're gonna try to use my press and see if it'll work. I'm not 100% sure that it will, but if it does, maybe a cleaner, easier process to remove them that way. Let's go ahead and try it. If not, we'll just go to hammering that sleeve and eventually it'll just come right out. So let's get it. One thing I really like about these ECS rear subframe bushing inserts, this is the poly portion of the bushing. There's a metal slug that also goes in. What I really like is the fact that they've made provisions here, these little cutouts for the ripples that are in the factory subframe. Here you can see there's these little like nubs that stick out and kind of catch the factory subframe bushing. But when you're installing a poly bushing, say like the AKG ones we did in the other video, they end up actually kind of getting torn. They kind of cut themselves as they go in. And we know this because little chunks would kind of fly out as we were hammering them in. Not to mention, you'd hammer them in and then they'd kind of pop back out and so it was really a pain in the butt to get them to just seat all the way. Whereas with these, it takes very little persuasion to get them in. Some are machined to have a bigger space between them because some sections, like here to here, is bigger than like here to here. So you got to be mindful of that. The thick section is easiest to notate towards the inside wall here where it comes together. There's kind of like a split, and you can just put that one there, which will line up the thin one here, and then visually you can see there's a thin one here, and this thing will basically just fall right in. We used to do it on the other side, a little tap. Took just a little bit of hammering. I'll show you that here. It's like really, really lightly, just tap this thing around, kind of in a circular motion, and it goes right in perfectly and sits flush. So I really like that. Whereas the AKG ones, we really had to fight. So I'm gonna give that a +1 to ECS for making the provisions to have extra space here for these little guys. We'll go ahead and get the rest of the bushings in. We've got 3 of 4 in. We'll get the slugs in, and then go ahead and get this diff swapped over and get the subframe back in the car. When you get both side bushings installed here, you're gonna go ahead and install your slugs, the long ones from the top side down. The front ones are these bigger ones. Everything's labeled front and rear when it comes out of the box, so be mindful of that. As you'll see here, this box says rear inserts. It's upside down, but it says rear inserts. So you wanna make sure that those go in the rear. The rear one is smaller and will kind of sit inside of the bushing. It'll push down all the way to where this lip sits just down inside the bushing there, like that. Whereas the front is actually like full diameter and goes all the way around. These will locate, whereas this one won't. If you tried to put this one in the front, it would not work, as there is pins for locating and would not fit over them. So that's another way you know front and rear if for whatever reason your labeling is mixed up. We're gonna go ahead and just tap this down, get that one installed, and then the lower side we'll put on at the very end. They'll just fall out if we try to do it now, so we'll just leave it like that. But both front sides are in. We're gonna move on to the diff bushings next. So I'm gonna hammer this last one and then move on to the diff bushings. All right guys, we pushed out the inner slugs on the forward diff bushings. We're currently, I don't know if you guys can see that, torching the rear diff slug so we can smack the slug out, so we can use our wheel bearing press. This one takes a bit of heat to really get it hot enough to smack itself out, and then we'll get the new bushings in and be done. That was a real pain in the butt getting this rear diff bushing out. We kind of hammered both sides, folded it over once we pushed the metal slug out, and then unfortunately the very first time I pulled it, I pulled the whole rubber out without the metal sleeve, and so we had to basically do it again. Hammered over the edges enough to basically catch these guys as they went through, because there isn't one that's just perfectly sized. They're either a little big or a little small, and so that helps to catch the actual sleeve. And then it actually tore the sleeve and left like half of it in place, so I had to do it like a third time. Real pain in the butt. We got it out. We got the front ones out as well, as you can see here. We're gonna go ahead and install the new ECS poly bushes. Very easy. You just install these bad boys and then hammer in the inner slugs. You can just do it by hand or just take a little hammer and tap them in a little. Rubber mallet, hammer, whatever, all works nonetheless, the same. You just want to go around it all the way, make sure it's all in. And then these generally take a little persuasion. Couple smacks. We'll do the same thing for the back one here. Go ahead and tap the outer slug in, or sleeve. All right guys, I might have to put the camera down and help him real quick, but you get the idea. Just tap it in. A piece of wood would work great for this, or some type of bushing puller, but we'll go ahead and knock this in and we'll show you what we used. The diff bushings are installed, front and rears. Sway bar is all in and torqued. The diff is ready to go in. We're gonna go ahead and get the new diff up in here. It does have fluid in it, so we'll have to be careful not to lose any of that. Try to get a shot here of kind of how we do it, how we shimmy it back and forth. But yeah, anyways, let's go ahead, stop talking about it, and just get this diff up in here and keep moving forward. The SD card ended up dying, and so it's the next day. We've installed our lockout kit, which goes right between these tabs on both sides. The inner here, give you guys a look at, is also locked out. We chose to put the bolt facing the back of the car due to rust reasons and the fact that you really want to torque from the nut side, and it feels like it's easier to do this way, I believe, with the tools. So easier to see the nut too if it's coming loose. So everything's been marked and torqued to 100 Newton meters. We went through every control arm. Even some of the control arms we didn't replace, we just checked them and marked them. We also have our forward traction arm in and torqued. We did measure the arms to the factory arms and made sure that they were about the same length as factory, putting them in, so we're starting from like a neutral position. Everything has been torqued. Like I said before, the subframe is 28 Newton meters. The end link nuts are 56 Newton meters, and all of these hardware are 100 Newton meters or 74 foot-pounds. We're gonna torque the little bolt here on these guys to 150 inch-pounds, and we're pretty much done. We're gonna go ahead and install the subframe back in the car. Big diff mount here is 220 Newton meters. The front ones are 120 Newton meters. All of that has been torqued and marked as well, as you guys can see. Everything's looking beautiful. To be honest, I like these bushings quite a bit more just for install than the AKG ones. I would highly recommend these. As far as the poly bushings go, they do make a pair of solid, as well as AKG and some other people that I know, but they're out of stock. We'd love to test those in another video. But anyways, we'll be throwing this back in and taking her for a test drive and letting you guys know how everything feels. In the meantime, guys, Morgan has moved on to removing the front forward thrust arm so we can get the monoball installed. Morgan's got a 18 mil bolt, releasing the forward bolt here to the thrust arm. We're gonna go ahead and get that off. We'll show you that in a second. It's also a 21 mil on the bottom side. We're gonna show you installing the monoballs and yeah, simultaneously knocking out the car. All right guys, here we have the factory control arms out. We're gonna go ahead and press this big bushing out. We're gonna show you how we do that. One side is kind of square cut, basically has no gap. That's the side you wanna push through. We are going to push it though from the side that has the slight bigger gap, which is the bevel side. So happens to be the side here with the little book on it, or whatever you want to consider that. Anyways, let's go ahead and get these over on the press and get them pressed out. As you can see, the bushing's coming down. It's actually going pretty smooth here. You want to make sure that you don't catch the arm. Just cranking on this thing till it can't go any further. Arm's almost free. There's probably just not enough space. We got to give it a little more room. All right. So we're like 99% of the way there. As you guys can see, it's liquid filled. All the liquid's starting to fall out, so make note of that. Don't get it all over yourself like I did last time. From here, we can actually probably just smack it with a hammer and it'll probably come out. So let's go to the trash can and do that. One smack and she came right out. So there we have it. Stuff's nasty. We'll go ahead and get the new monoball in. But if you take note, one side is kind of square cut and the other side is bevel. And that's the side that we want to press the monoball through. So we'll go ahead and grab our monoballs and get them installed in this arm after we remove the bushing from the other arm. I've shown you these monoballs before, but these are the F3 F2X front thrust arm monoball kit from Turner or ECS. They're sister brands. They make all sorts of stuff for these cars, and these are some of my favorite. There's other companies that make them out there, like you've seen us install before, like Dynan or AKG or this company or that company. Tons of people that make them. We get the best deals from Turner, and to be honest, I prefer their style generally. A lot of the time they're knurled, but this may be one of their older designs where it doesn't have the knurling. Nonetheless, It's a press fit. I've never been worried about this actual slug rotating, and I love that they use just a factory like Lemforder sealed monoball. That's a factory BMW part number. I have a bunch of these on the shelf so that you could service these down the road and just reuse the slug. Slug's kind of like a lifetime thing, and these monoballs, to be honest, I've found to last at least 50,000 if not 100,000 miles or more when taken care of. Love these things. We're gonna go ahead and press these into the control arms. We've gone ahead and wiped down the old control arms here. We've got them sitting here waiting for us, all wiped down, freshly cleaned. Something you want to do after you press out the old bushing, as there will generally be some gunk in there. So we're going to go ahead and press it in from this beveled edge here and get these monoballs in there and get these arms back on the car. This is really a fairly simple mod that is so huge when it comes to performance, and something that's widely overlooked in the BMW lineup, as this bushing contributes to a lot of the slop and laziness that you feel in your front end due to it being so big and so much rubber and a lot of time worn out. So yeah, you should think about a set of monoballs for your BMW or any car that has a bushing style suspension like this with a big bushing. Generally most cars have a bushing that is in the suspension that contributes to a lot of the play and slack in the front end. So nonetheless, let's get these bad boys in. It's one installed monoball. We'll go ahead and put the clip in there that holds it in place, retaining clip, and then we'll go ahead and get this installed back on the car. Our second monoball pressed in. We're gonna go ahead and get our circlip put on this bad boy, which is looking wonderful. We'll go ahead and push these bad boys back onto the car. We got Morgan over here working on getting the front subframe out, and still got to get this rear subframe in. I moved on to helping him with the monoballs. The circlip is super easy to install. It splits on two sides. It really doesn't matter which side you go down. I like to put it with the clip facing the ball joint side. So we'll go ahead and throw this bad boy in there, run it around like a little piston ring. This one actually seated pretty good right off the bat. Sometimes they need a little persuasion, so I take a little screwdriver and just tap the tip one time or two times, and it'll make an audible noise. I don't know if you guys could hear that, but this one did make a little audible noise, and that's just signs that it's seated all the way. So once that's done, it'll basically be flush. I don't know if you guys can see this, with the other two halves of the ring. So I'm going ahead, put this bad boy in. We're good. Let's go ahead and get it installed on the car. All right guys, that was a real pain in the butt. We got the stock sway bar out. Key was to hoist the engine up basically as high as we possibly can with our engine bar, and then we lowered the subframe, and even with that, it was still quite tricky to twist and finagle this thing out of here. Kind of had to pry the subframe down as far as we could get it. But yeah, nonetheless, it's all there. Before you do that, you gotta put them on the sway bar, bud.
I'm making sure they fit.
Of course they fit, they're for the car. As you guys can see here, the sway bar is quite a bit thicker than the factory sway bar. It's obviously blue from H&R. We're gonna be installing some SPL end links to go with it. First things first, let's go ahead, get the subframe in, or the sway bar in the car and the subframe back in the car, and then we can put the end links on. But yeah, it's almost there. Got to take all the subframe bolts out and using a pull stand to hold it down. You guys at home could use a jack on some jack stands and probably do it. Would be really a pain in the butt to do. You probably need a friend, but yeah, let's keep moving on, get these bad boys going. Sway bar is in. Got the bushings where they're supposed to be. Morgan's over here putting on the bracket hold downs. Show you guys his side. Putting the hole down all over the bushing. It's quite difficult because the bushings are new and tight, but you squish it down and then use the nuts once you get it down enough to suck it down onto the studs. We've basically finished the car now. We're just gonna give you a quick rundown on what's been done. Underbelly pan's been put in, subframe's been put in, torqued to 108 Newton meters front and rear. Monoball here has been torqued in at 120 Newton meters, or actually my bad, this is 100 plus 90. The end links are 30 foot-pounds. The sway bar is 28 Newton meters for the mount. Everything's been marked and aligned. The exhaust has been put back in. The heat shields have been put back in. The brace here has been put back in. Once again, the subframe, 108 Newton meters. All the control arms in the rear are 100 Newton meters. The shock is 100 Newton meters plus 90. The big diff mount in the rear is 220 Newton meters. The front ones are 120 Newton meters. The drive shaft for the nuts and bolts are 56 Newton meters plus 90 degrees. And the actual bolts to the end here are 85 Newton meters. Everything has been put in and put back in its place. The ABS sensors and parking brake cables have been torqued to 10 Newton meters, and all is good and ready to go. We're gonna go ahead and bring this bad girl down. All the control arms, pinch bolts torqued to 150, and all is good in the back here. We're gonna bring this bad girl down and take her for a test drive and then check the alignment. And from there, we'll give you guys some feedback as to how she feels. But these SPL Turner and H&R sway bar and end links from SPL and traction arms are looking sick. The ECS poly bushings for the subframe and diff are looking sick, are gonna make this thing feel amazing. So enough talking about it. I'm stoked to feel the front monoballs and front end links and see how that really feels. This sway bar up here in the front. We'll go ahead and bring it down and just take you guys for a ride. This thing should be feeling pretty sick now. All right guys, we just pulled the M240 out of the shop. We're gonna take it on the first drive here. Excited to feel these new suspension mods and stiffening mods. Ooh, yeah. Just going over that right there. It's a pretty big dip sideways. Car feels nice and stiff. It kind of feels like how it should, honestly. Dude, this feels a lot like how the M2 felt, like my brand new stock M2. Just from first bumps here, pulling around on the street. Alignment's obviously a little off. We had everything out of the car, subframe, front and rear, and a lot of suspension components have been adjusted, so things are out of whack for sure. We ooh, yeah, nice and tight with those sway bars. We didn't tell you guys, but we also put some new Guibos on the drive shaft and some new rear brake pads, so I do have to bed those rear brake pads in. Still warming the car up too. Drivetrain has a lot less slop in it. You can definitely feel that. Trans and whatnot feels really nice. Downshifting. Waited for everyone to get out of the way. We've got the car in manual mode. We're just gonna roll on in first and hopefully that was a good clip, but the car's pretty brutal. Makes some pretty good power. It is a stock motor, but he's on a pure 850 with some custom fueling mods and a pretty happy tune. So Nonetheless, she moves out pretty good. Those new subframe and diff mods really make the car feel more planted and more confidence inspiring. You know, without the alignment, it's really not that bad. The car still drives pretty straight, but an alignment will definitely make this thing better. But just cruising around here on the street, there's really no additional noise or vibration, harshness, anything that I'm getting from the drivetrain. Got the car up to about 50 miles an hour right now. We'll go take this little windy road back here and see how that feels. I'm sure the car's gonna feel a lot more planted mid-turn. But these mods are fairly inexpensive to do and improve the car feel so much. I mean, this thing really kind of feels like an M2 now, like how I would say a stock M2 feels, or maybe an M2 with coilovers or something. If I had to guess size, these sway bars are about the size of the stock M2 ones now. Way less body roll mid-turn, feels way better. 240s always feel boaty to me and have a lot of body roll, and never really feel all that play feel. They feel kind of jello-y, and I hate that about most base model cars. There's very few cars on the market today that really give you that raw feeling from the factory. And not that the M2 is the most raw car ever. I mean, you got to get to something like a GT3 RS or whatever to really get the type of feeling I'm looking for. But nonetheless, just for being a little M240 with some sway bars and some control arms, I mean, this thing is way more confidence inspiring. This road is pretty rough here, and it's soaking it up pretty good. It's a pretty rough road, so definitely I would say improved the car feel. This thing's wild. She be kicking.
Oh no.
Still wanders around a little bit.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
It's a lot better than before. Dude, but I don't think I want to go crazier suspension.
Diff definitely
Fuck
works.
the brake-in. But you know, it's getting to that point where it's like, how much more do you want to push a street car before it starts to feel like not a street car
Too
anymore?
much, yeah.
I think this is pretty close.
Yeah, if you had any more turbo lag, it would suck.
Yeah. You good?
Like the way it sounds?
How's the approval?
It's good.
Sounds good. I like the brap too.
Car's all done. Very happy with the results. Hopefully you guys like this type of content. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.